Welcome back to our recaps for Crescent City House of Earth and Blood. We are going to cover chapters 17 through 41. And I got my handy dandy notes to keep me on track, so we keep this hopefully short into one video, maybe two. First, we start with Bryce. She heads to the meat market on her little Vespa scooter thing, is how I'm imagining it. Hunt, pissed that she snuck out through the back so that he wouldn't see her if she left through the front. She heads to the meat market, he gets pissed, lands there. She was like, perfect, you're just on time. Actually, she said he was 2 minutes late, but you know, tomato tomato. He is like, I told you that it's gonna take a few days to get through the right channels to talk to the Viper Queen. She's like, oh, I'm not here to talk to the Viper Queen. She goes to this shady place where there's some little fawn dude who is selling all sorts of salts. Different colored salts do different things. The shadiest type of salt is obsidian salt, which that is used for summoning, such as summoning demons. So she's trying to convince this guy to sell her obsidian salt. He's really sweating and like scared also because Hunt is there, the literal Umbra Mortis, and she's literally requesting an illegal salt. And he's like, I can't sell, I don't know, have any for you, whatever. And she pretends that she's there for Jezebel. She ends up making a deal, and then he does sell her some salt. And she transfers like $10,000 or whatever to him, which she did use Jezebel's account for. And of course, as they're leaving, they get stopped by the Viper Queen and the Viper Queen's men, which are like, apparently she makes this, her venom is like some kind of drug or something. So all of these, it's like a bunch of fae males that defected from the House of Sky and Breath, and they all look like, they look kind of, not quite possessed, but they're under her influence for sure. So anyway, they lead her to the Viper Queen's office, where she sits them down and is like, so, heard that you're trying to buy some salt, whatever. She ends up giving them her alibi, saying that she was not there, and also saying that snakes can, like, you can sense before something happens, which is why she took her men off the streets right before Maximus died. And then she also tells Bryce to maybe look where it hurts most, which is lovely advice. And so then they leave peacefully, luckily. Then Rune ends up texting Bryce and is like, hey, meet me at Luna's temple because there's limited to no cameras there. So then Hunt and Bryce go there. We learn they hide in like a corner because there's no cameras allowed inside the temple, so they're all outside the temple, but there's a lot of tourist guides and whatnot walking around. So they end up hiding in a corner with Rune's shadows obscuring them. So as long as no one bumps into them, no one's gonna see them. They end up discussing how the Autumn King has tasked Rune with finding the horn now, and of how he has been doing some research and whatnot, and he and Bryce, mostly Rune, give Hunt a little bit of lore on why the horn is important and how it's related to the Fae. So way back in the time of like the crossing, there was a prince named Prince Peleus, and he's the one who first created or used the horn, and so he had the Starborn power. And he used it to defeat somebody called the Star Eater and all of his hordes and demons, and then they ended up using the horn and the magic that is within it, or like using his magic through the horn, sealed the Northern Rift. So there's this thing in the Northern Rift, and then the Southern Rift. Both of these places are where demons can come through, but they were sealed, so then it's like only small demons can occasionally slip through. So now the only way demons can actually show up in Midgard is teeny ones slipping through the rift or being summoned through things like obsidian salt. So then he also finds an image and he shows it to Bryce. It's like on a vase. I imagine it kind of like Greek vases, like Hercules style. Shows an image of the demon, and he's like, do you recognize this? And she's like, that's the same demon I saw. He's like, this is called a Crystallos demon. Hunt, who knows pretty much all the demons because he hunts them, is like, I've never heard of this. And they're like, yeah, we found there's like very little evidence we have about this stuff. So now they're trying to dig deeper into what this Crystallos demon is, which apparently was bred purely to hunt the horn. Like, that's exactly its purpose. I think it was created by the Star Eater dude. Anyway, purposely created for that. So now they have to figure out how to find the Crystallos demon, since clearly it's back and killing people, and also still find the horn. The next day, they get a call from Isaiah. Turns out an acolyte who was there at the temple while they were there hiding was murdered. Crystallos demon style. Obviously, Hunt doesn't think twice about it, and he's like, yeah, let's go. Brings Bryce with him. She did not want to go because she didn't want to see that again after the trauma with Danica and the pack, but she ends up going. Total panic attack, shock, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's not great. And then Rune is like, "You're an idiot, Athalar. Why did you bring her here?" And then Hunt realizes his mistake and is like, "Oh, crap. That was my bad for sure." So then she's like spiraling and she just leaves. And then he's following her and she ends up going to the White Raven Club. Yeah, she ends up going to the White Raven Club because she had texted Juniper and Juniper told her that she would meet her there because she was there for dance stuff. So Hunt ends up following her, even though they had a fight and she's pissed at him and also not doing great. He still follows her because he has to, part of his guard duty. Follows her in, sits at a table, is watching her interact with Juniper, meets Juniper briefly, and then they go talk somewhere far away from Hunt because, again, Bryce is still pissed. He also finds out he thought that she was just drinking away her problems, and he's like, "What are you drinking, like vodka or something? Because it's just clear liquid." And then he goes to take a sip and it's water, and he's like, "Why are you drinking water?" And she's like, "I literally haven't drunk in 2 years. You loser." So anyway, he's like, feels bad that he's been assuming this whole time. She's like, "I just let people assume, like you." Anyway, who shows up also later? Rune, because again, the bar owner, club owner, he contacts Rune anytime Bryce is there and not in a good place, so he shows up as well, pretends that it's not because the club owner called him, and then he also tells Hunt that Bryce also used to dance, and then she stopped entirely, also after the pack died. So Hunt is learning these little bit of tidbits about Bryce. I think it's right when Bryce turns, sees that Rune's also now here sitting at the table with Hunt. She turns to like probably go bite his head off about being an alpha hole, but then the entire club blows up. And Bryce herself dives over Juniper to protect her with her entire body. Okay, so luckily they're fine. Hunt and Rune are fine. They get up, whatever. The noise was really loud, so Bryce's like eardrums are burst, so she's like bleeding here. And then Juniper like gets up, sees what had happened, and slaps Bryce right across the face and is like, "How dare you do that? I did the drop 2 years ago. You haven't even made the drop." So she's pissed. She leaves. Bryce is in shock again. Second shock because of a bomb, and then also just got slapped by Juniper. So then she just staring at nothing. Hunt ends up taking her to Rune's house because Rune gave the address. So they go in there. He starts taking care of her, cleaning her ears because he realizes she probably can't hear because she's not responding. Also, she probably wouldn't respond to him anyway. They get there, Rune shows up, gives them the situation, explains that they saw some crates, and they had what kind of looked like a distorted C, but also if you didn't look at it as a C for Crescent City, it could have been like the shape of the horn. So now they're taking it as just like someone's targeting them because they're looking into the horn and the Crystallos demon. When Rune shows them the footage of what was probably the horn insignia on the box before it blew up at the club, he also basically requests permission from Bryce to go into the secret little basement of Griffin Antiquities, and he's like, "We all know it's there." And she's like, "No, you don't know it's there." And he's like, "Please, I just need to like research the stuff. I know there's like a library or something down there. Let me come in." And then Hunt's like trying not to laugh or smirk because he definitely was let in there by Bryce like a week ago, maybe not even a week, however long it's been. So he's like, you know, smug that he's been in there, and Rune doesn't even know if it actually exists. And then Bryce is like, "You can't come in there." And he's like, "So you admit it's real?" And she was like, doesn't even care at this point. She's like, fine, makes a deal with him. He can come in the next morning. So he's actually kind of surprised. And he also tells Bryce that the Autumn King says she needs to have a guard on her at all times, and he volunteers to be a guard, and she's like, absolutely not, because she's also still pissed at Rune for reasons unknown. And so anyway, she's like, "No, I already got one, Hunt." And then she's like, "You're moving into the guest room." And Hunt's like, "Well, okay, cool, I guess." So now instead of being on her opposite roof, he's now moved into her apartment in the guest room when Bryce is walking back from Rune's house to the apartment. Bryce, in her head, not having a great night. She has a flashback to her senior year with Danica when they like stole a motorcycle, or they're on a motorcycle, and we don't have an understanding of the full situation, but the glimpses we have is motorcycle wrecks somewhere like deserty, like Arizona type deal. And there's some semi-truck with 2 veneer in it, and they have a shotgun, and one guy's trying to find where the ammo is, and Bryce's arm broken, Danica shielded Bryce from the fall of the motorcycle with her whole body. So she took like the brunt of the road rash, so they're both not doing great. They make both of them put their hands up. They're like about to die, supposedly, once this guy finds like his shotgun shells or whatever. And they know they're in a bad situation, and this is the first time Danica looks at Bryce and says, "I love you, Bryce." And then all she says is, "Close your eyes, Danica." And that's all we get from that.
So then Bryce gets home.
She just goes to her room, showers, and then goes to bed. He goes to the guest room, kind of starts snooping through all the drawers, whatever. Notices she has a lot of stuff there from like her mom probably visiting. As he's snooping, he also sees a picture actually of Bryce and her mom and her stepdad, and then he's like, holy crap, I didn't realize that like Bryce's stepfather is literally Randall, like the famed sharpshooter, because every human has to serve 3 years in like the military. So her stepdad had to do his 3 years, whatever. It turns out during that time, famed sharpshooter. So he's like, holy crap. So she also has a picture of her and Danica in like a desert landscape, and Danica is wearing her leather jacket that he saw Bryce wearing, which on the back has in like ancient Fey language or ancient language, it says like, through love all is possible. He's like, ah, okay, Bryce got that jacket from Danica, got it, sounds good. So he's just snooping, and then he showers and goes to bed. The next morning he shows up right on time, meets Lehaba, who's a little fire sprite who also guards like a lot of the books, because some of them are normal books but some of them are magic, and they'll try to escape, which is why she is there to keep them in. We don't really know the nature of a lot of these books outside of the fact that they want to leave, and Lehaba says absolutely not. So she's there 24/7, and she likes to watch like reality TV. She likes to watch a show that Bryce likes to call Fangs and Bangs, and she's like, that's not what it's called. And then when Hunt showed up, he was like, oh, are you watching Fangs and Bangs? And she's like, did you tell him to say that? And she's like, I didn't, he said that all on his own. So anyway, Lahaba's a funny little sprite. She likes to talk and gossip and eavesdrop all the time, and so Rune meets her. He's very polite to her, and he starts using his power trying to look for a book, and he sees a book that almost quite literally jumps out at him. So he takes it and starts reading it, and while he's doing that, Bryce and Hunt are at like another desk table thing, and they are combing over Danica's all of her movements for the last like 2 weeks of her life. Bryce had Declan basically hack whatever system to like get all of Danica's movements for those 2 weeks and send that data to her. So she and Hunt are combing through all of these. Meanwhile, Rune is reading this book, and turns out this book is kind of like a love story, and so he's confused, but then he also learns more details about Peleus. So he learns that Peleus was a general for a Fey queen, and her name was Thea. And turns out Thea also had the Starborn power. And then she also had a daughter named Helena who marries Peleus, who also had the Starborn power, so that's 3 Fey with the Starborn power. And then there's a second daughter that's unnamed, so this is like info that Rune's learning, and he's sharing it out loud. He's like, I don't really know what this has to do with the horn, but that's more Fey with the Starborn power than I thought. Also, after the bombing, Hunt accidentally lets it slip that the angel who was the one that Bryce saved back in the first time the Crystallo struck and killed Danica in the pack, he reveals that that angel was none other than Archangel Micah. So then Bryce is really pissed because she's like, I spent so much time trying to find out if that angel even lived, and like no one would tell me any information. Like, do you know how hard it was for me to not even know if I did something good? And Hunt's like feels really bad, and he's like, I'm sorry, there was like nothing I could do. I didn't know you, didn't realize. And then also it would have looked bad had the Archangel literally been saved by a half Fey girl who had not even made the drop and didn't have very much power. So like there was a lot of political things happening, and it wouldn't have looked good. So she's pissed, but now she knows Micah's the one she had saved. Alright, they end up leaving Griffin Antiquities and going their separate ways, continuing the investigation. Rune's doing his own thing. Hunt and Bryce end up back in the apartment, and Bryce ends up taking Hunt's phone and realizes, she looks at his photo app, he's had this phone for 4 years, first picture dated 4 years ago. He has only 36 pictures on it, and they are all of dismembered parts because they're all like evidence type pictures. And she's like, this is really weird and creepy. And he's like, I have nothing to take pictures of. And he's like, what would I take pictures of outside of this? And then like just for evidence. And she was like, living life. And then he didn't say anything. And so then she ends up She ends up taking a little selfie. Selfie is like they're your first normal picture.
Now that Hunt
has moved into her guest room, he needs to go pick up some spare clothes. He knows Sandriel's coming sometime soon, so he he takes Bryce. They go to the comitium because she can't fly. Obviously, they have to go in through the front doors instead of him flying to the top. Little landing and sneaking into the barracks to grab his clothes and piece out of there before anyone could see him and talk to him that he doesn't want to talk to. Lucky for them, not really. They get there, grab his clothes, and as they are leaving, who should show up but Sandriel and Micah walk right into the lobby, and then everyone immediately bows, kneels, does whatever, because two archangels, literally right there, also guest one, Sandriel. Hunt, paralyzed, standing. Isaiah is standing right next to them, and he's like, get down, and Bryce sees that Hunt is paralyzed, and so she's like, I got you, sir. Takes out her phone, starts taking selfies and being like, beep, 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 beep. Being like, oh, thank you for letting me take these pictures and give me a tour or whatever, and tries to be like, vapid party girl again. And then she grabs him and they just book it straight to the elevator, back up to the top. He kind of unfreezes a little bit, and Isaiah and everybody, Hunt knows he's gonna pay for that from Micah. They end up escaping, barely. Luckily for him, Pollux wasn't there, but seeing Sandriel, not great. Wasn't great memories, lots of horrible flashbacks. So later that day, he drops Bryce off, and then Hunt gets a text message from Micah that he has another mission, and he knows that this is payback for embarrassing Micah in front of Sandriel and not showing respect and kneeling or bowing or whatever it is they do. So he has to go do that, and Bryce, he only says he has to go do something, but Bryce knows. She knows what the Umbra Mortis does, so she's just like, okay, have fun. When Hunt leaves to go do his mission, Bryce finishes work, and Lahaba turns to her and is like, you know, they're really nice. I like the prince and I like Hunt. And she's like, you just like looking at them because they're attractive? And then she's like, yeah, but Danica was always really rude to me, or she just ignored me outright, and like both the prince and Hunt are nice to her. And so she's like, maybe it's nice to have friends like Bryce, because Bryce hasn't really had friends in the last however long since Danica, in the last like 2 years. She hasn't really made any additional friends or spent time with friends very much. So Haba just makes that comment about how it could be nice to have friends again. And then he comes back and he's not in a good mood, and she's like, yikes, and he just goes to bed. They go back to work the next day. They go back to Griffin Antiquities, and they're back in the basement searching through Danica's movements or whatever. They decide that they're gonna have to interrogate Philip Briggs from prison, because they need to see if it's his organization that like bombed the Raven again. So it takes a few days to put the request in and get him back to Lunathion, Crescent City, from whatever prison he's in. So that request comes in. Bryce and Hunt go. Philip Briggs ends up talking about, he's like, dude, do you know what I go through in this prison? Like, there's no way I could have any contact with the outside world. And Hunt is like, been there, yeah, fair. But obviously he doesn't let that show, he just thinks it. And then Philip Briggs, when they say like, did you kill Danica, whatever, and he's like, why would I kill her? I thought that she would be, like, I thought that she could have potentially come over to our side, like she would have been a sympathizer. And Bryce is like, there's no way she was not a sympathizer, whatever. He's like, no, yeah, like, I encountered her a few times. Like, she let us off easy a few times, told us to stop, and then obviously when we didn't stop, then that's when she had to take us in. But I really like Danica and that second of hers. And then Bryce is getting so triggered because she's like, absolutely not. And then he's like, no, I'm pretty sure, like, I think she could have been a sympathizer, or like turned to one. Like, there was potential there. I really liked her, so I didn't kill her. And finally, you guys all realize that, you know. And then he continues saying some crazy other things about not regretting bombing things and whatnot. And so then they're done. Hunt then is also going on a spiral because he's like, oh my gosh, like, was I this crazy loyal to my cause back when I was with Shahar? Like, I'm no different than Briggs. So when they're back at her apartment and they're sitting on the couch, and she can tell he's in his head. And so then he admits, like, he's like, I'm not any different than Briggs. And then she just like reaches over, she holds his hand, she's like, dude, did you ever willingly, purposely kill innocents, like, for pleasure and your cause? And he's like, no. And she's like, well, then you're not Briggs, you're fine, you got it, you're a good dude. While they're talking, they end up realizing, like, hey, we should look over that footage again from the night that the blackout happened from 2 years ago at the temple, and just see if we can get Declan to look it over and find something that maybe like the 33rd or the Ox missed when they looked the first time. So they send that request over to Declan, and then the next day or some days later, they text Bryce and Hunt and say, hey, meet us here. So they show up in the shooting range, and it's Declan, Tristan, and Rune practicing, brushing up their skills, whatever, because they're in the Ox, so, you know, they gotta keep their skills sharp, and this was like a private session because they're not with the whole Ox, they're just by themselves, having a fun time. Bryce and Hunt show up. They basically, they urge her to show her skills. They're like, you could do better, whatever, but they've seen her shoot before, I think, pretty sure. So they're like, yeah, Bryce, whatever, and she's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So she sees the target down there, whatever. She takes the gun, aims, boom, 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 3 shots. They all look down at the target. They're like, Tristan or someone's like, well, you missed. You only made 1 shot. And then Hunt, who has, I think, Angel Vision might be slightly better than Fae Vision. Whatever it is, he can see it. And as they're like pulling it in, the target in, he's like, no, she didn't. That's 3 in 1 hole. And when you pull it in closer, you can see it's not a perfect circle. So it's like boom, 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 but all 1 hole, 3 shots. And then they're like, holy crap, that was crazy. And then Bryce gives like some look to Hunt like, yeah, what you gonna do about it, sir? Like obviously kind of testing him, because sometimes I guess previous dudes who've seen her shoot, I don't know, they get all egotistical or something, get their pride hurt or whatever. So Hunt's like, challenge accepted. So he then takes it, looks at her, shoots a hole right through her hole, and is like, boom, I got you, girl. And then she's like, okay, cool, okay. Anyway, now that he's seen Bryce's sharpshooting skills, he's like, yeah, that's right. That's what I would expect from Randall's daughter. Okay, so Declan ends up telling Bryce and letting her know that the footage that she requested, it actually was swapped out because it's blackout that's dark, but the audio, he like analyzed the audio, and the audio was swapped from being by Luna's temple to actually being the gate over in Fyro, because you can hear like different whatever sounds. So he's like, this was really done well. And then he says that Sabine Fendir, though, Danica's mom, is the one who headed up the investigation the night of the blackout, though. So they're gonna have to look into Sabine, because she would have been the one to know about this footage swapping, or done it herself. Isaiah then calls, says there's been another murder. All of them end up going because the 3 boys are Ox, and Hunt and Bryce are obviously part of this investigation, so they end up going. And then Bryce doesn't quite look at the body this time, but she's okay when she shows up. And then she has this realization that she's like, pulls up a map on her phone. She's like, all of these bodies have been found, one like really close to the main central streets, and those main central streets are all on top of the ley lines. So then they send that to Isaiah to look into deeper about this ley line theory, seeing if maybe they can capture the when the Crystallos is showing up and whatever, if they can maybe capture it, because it keeps avoiding cameras because it knows where they are. Room then ends up going, he had talked to a witch, probably like a med witch, at the crime scene, and then ends up having the idea to talk to another witch again in the next morning. So he shows up to a clinic to speak to a witch because he has questions about the horn. And obviously witches, they're med witches, so they heal. They usually specialize in like healing magic type deals. So he's thinking there's some like prophecy, something or other, that says that the horn can be healed by like light that is not light, and some other magic paradoxical words. So he's really confused with that. Maybe the witches have an idea. Shows up to this clinic, and there's a cute witch there with a fun accent, and she's like, oh, I'm actually not like the permanent witch here, I'm just substituting or whatever for my sister or somebody. So he's like, okay, well maybe you can still help me. And she's like, okay, I take my lunch soon. So she takes her lunch. They go into this little like atrium courtyard thing in the doctor's office essentially. And he asks this question. He's like, do you know what like light that's not light type thing is? And this whole little riddle thing. And she ends up giving her 2 cents, and she talks about how theoretically you could like fix the horn and repairing a magic item, and she doesn't like specialize in it, but she's like, it could theoretically be done. Gives him some ideas, and then he leaves, and then he realizes he never asked her name, and so he's like, huh, okay, dang, bummer. Then Bryce and Hunt end up meeting Victoria in her office, and she's like, so we did look into your ley line theory, and there are like these visible dips in the data, whatever, for like a brief blip second, but right before the murders, like the nights of each murder. so far there have been these dips. And then she's like, one camera caught just a claw, and it's very clearly the claw of the Cristallo. So she's like, this is it. So they end up searching for like any clues when they're there physically, and then they're like, oh my gosh, no wonder it's been missing cameras. Do you know what we forgot? Sewers. There's a sewer right there. So they go down in the sewers, but unfortunately there's no clear evidence because there's like a lot of claw marks and stuff there already from who knows what. So they end up going back home. They shower. Bryce is scrubbing herself 20 times because the sewers are nasty. And while she's in the shower, Hunt knocks on the door and is like, hey, I'm out of soap. Do you have any extras? And she's like, yeah, linen closet, some soap in there. He then comes back like a minute later, dead serious voice. He's like, Bryce, we need to talk. And she's like, what happened? So she hops out of the shower super quick, wraps herself in her towel, comes out, and then he's just standing there with a little, I imagine like a My Little Pony. It's a little unicorn Pegasus toy. He's like, what on earth is this? It's like purple, sparkly, and she's like, that's Jelly Jubilee. And so then she teases him for thinking that she had sex toys in the closet just for anyone to see, should they be snooping her closet. And then also teases her a little bit about these toys, these little Pegasus horse things. And then she's like, this is my Jelly Jubilee, don't touch it, I love it, blah, blah, blah. Gives him the backstory.
Just realized my video cut off before. Essentially, she gives the backstory of how the whole line of whatever horse Pegasus things Jelly Jubilee comes from, they were really popular when she was like 5. And so that's what pretty much made her fit in with all the other normal kids since she was halfway. Made her fit in when she found those same toys and she had Jelly Jubilee, which was like specifically really rare or hard to get because she was both a unicorn and a Pegasus. And so that's the backstory of Jelly Jubilee. And so Hunt puts it back and leaves it on.